Okay, boys and girls, so we are reading Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, and we are up to chapter 13, which is called The Very Secret Diary, and that is page 240. Hermione remained in the hospital wing for several weeks. There was a flurry of rumour about her disappearance when the rest of the school arrived back from their Christmas holidays. Because, of course, everyone thought that she had been attacked. So many students filed past the hospital wing, trying to catch a glimpse of her that Madame Pomfrey took out her curtains again and placed them around Hermione's bed to spare her the shame of being seen with a fairy face. Harry and Ron went to visit her every evening. When the new term started, they brought her each day's homework. "If I'd sprouted whiskers, I'd take a break from work," said Ron, tipping a stack of books onto Hermione's bedside table one evening. "Don't be silly, Ron. I've got to keep up," said Hermione briskly. Her spirits were greatly improved by the fact that all the hair had gone from her face and her eyes were turning slowly back to brown. "I don't suppose you've got any new leads," she added in a whisper so that Madame Pomfrey couldn't hear her. "Nothing," said Harry gloomily. "I was so sure it was Malfoy," said Ron, for about the 100th time. "What's that?" asked Harry, pointing to something gold sticking out from under Hermione's pillow. "Just a get well card," said Hermione hastily, trying to poke it out of sight. But Ron was too quick for her. He pulled it out, flicked it open, and read aloud. "To Miss Granger, wishing you a speedy recovery. From your concerned teacher, Professor Gilderoy Lockhart, Order of Merlin, 3rd class, honorary member of the Dark Force Defense League, and 5 times winner of Witch Weekly's Most Charming Smile Award." Ron looked up at Hermione, disgusted. "You sleep with it under your pillow?" But Hermione was spared answering when Madame Pomfrey sweeping over with her evening dose of medicine. "Is Lockhart the smartest bloke you've ever met, or what?" Ron said to Harry as they left the dormitory and started up the stairs towards Gryffindor Tower. Snape had given them so much homework. Harry thought he was likely to be in the sixth year before he finished it. Ron was just saying he wished he had asked Hermione how many rat tails you were supposed to add to a hair-raising potion, when an angry outburst from the floor above reached their ears. "That's Filch," Harry muttered as they hurried up the stairs and paused out of sight, listening hard. "You don't think someone's been attacked?" said Ron tensely. They stood still, their heads inclined towards Filch's voice, which sounded quite hysterical. "Even more work for me, mopping all night like I haven't got enough to do. No, this is the final straw. I'm going to Dumbledore." His footsteps receded, and they heard a distant door slam. They poked their heads around the corner. Filch had clearly been manning his usual lookout post. They were once again on the spot where Mrs. Norris had been attacked. They saw at a glance what Filch had been shouting about. A great flood of water stretched over half the corridor, and it looked as though it was still seeping from under the door of Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. Now, Filch had stopped shouting. They could hear Myrtle's wails echoing off the bathroom walls. "Now what's up with her?" said Ron. "Let's go and see," said Harry, and holding their robes over their ankles, they stepped through the great wash of water to the door bearing its "out of order" sign, ignored it as always, and entered. Moaning Myrtle was crying. if possibly louder and harder than ever before. She seemed to be hiding down her usual toilet. It was dark in the bathroom because the candles had been extinguished in the great rush of water that had left both walls and floor soaking wet. "What's up, Myrtle?" said Harry. "Who's that?" guggled Myrtle miserably. "Come to throw something else at me." Harry waded across to her cubicle and said, "Why would I throw something at you, Myrtle?" "Don't ask me," Myrtle shouted, emerging with a wave of yet more water, which splashed onto the already sopping floor. "Here I am, minding my own business, and someone thinks it's funny to throw a book at me." "But it can't hurt you if someone throws something at you," said Harry reasonably. "I mean, it'd just go right through you, wouldn't it?" He had said the wrong thing. Myrtle puffed herself up and shrieked, "Let's all throw books at Myrtle because she can't feel it. 10 points if you can get it through her stomach. 50 points if it goes through her head. Well, ha ha ha, what a lovely game, I don't think." "Who threw it at you anyway?" asked Harry. "I don't know. I was just sitting on the U-bend, thinking about death, and it fell right through the top of my head," said Myrtle, glaring at them. "It's over there. It got washed out." Harry and Ron looked under the sink where Myrtle was pointing. A small thin book lay there. It had a shabby black cover and was as wet as everything else in the bathroom. Harry stepped forward to pick it up, but Ron suddenly flung out an arm to hold him back. "What?" said Harry. "Are you mad?" said Ron. "It could be dangerous." "Dangerous?" said Harry, laughing. "Come off it. How could it be dangerous?" "You'd be surprised," said Ron, who was looking more apprehensively at the book. Some of the book the ministry's confiscated. Dad's told me. There was one that burned your eyes out." And everyone who read Sonnets of a Sorcerer spoke in limericks for the rest of their lives. And some old witch in Bath had a book that you could never stop reading. You just had to wander around with your nose in it, trying to do everything one-handed. And, "All right, I've got the point," said Harry. The little book lay on the floor, nondescript and soggy. "Well, we won't find out unless we look at it," he said, and he ducked around Ron and picked it off the floor. Harry saw at once that it was a diary, and the faded year on the cover told him it was 50 years old. He opened it eagerly. On the first page, he could just make out the name T.M. Riddle in smudged ink. "Hang on," said Ron, who had approached cautiously and was looking over Harry's shoulder. "I know that name. T.M. Riddle. Got an award for special services to the school 50 years ago." "How on earth do you know that?" said Harry in amazement. "Because Filch made me polish his shield about 50 times in detention," said Ron resentfully. "That was the one I burped slugs all over. If you wipe slime off a name for an hour, you remember it too." Harry peeled the wet pages apart. They were completely blank. There wasn't the faintest trace of writing on any of them. Not even Auntie Mabel's birthday or dentist 3:30. "He never wrote in it," said Harry, disappointed. "I wonder why someone wanted to flush it away," said Ron curiously. Harry turned to the back cover of the book and saw the printed name of the newsagent in Vauxhall Road, London. "He must have been Muggle-born," said Harry thoughtfully, "to have bought a diary from Vauxhall Road." "Well, it's not much use to you," said Ron. He dropped his voice. 50 points if you can get it through Myrtle's nose. Harry, however, pocketed it. Hermione left the hospital wing, de-whiskered, tailless and fare-free, at the beginning of February. On her first evening back in Gryffindor Tower, Harry showed her T.M. Riddle's diary and told her the story of how they had found it. Ooh, it might have hidden powers, said Hermione enthusiastically, taking the diary and looking at it closely. If it has, it's hiding them very well, said Ron. Maybe it's shy. I don't know why you don't just chuck it, Harry. I wish I knew why someone did try to chuck it, said Harry. I wouldn't mind knowing how Riddle got an award for special services to Hogwarts either. Could have been anything, said Ron. Maybe he got 30 owls or saved a teacher from a giant squid. Maybe he murdered Myrtle. He would have done everyone a favour. But Harry could tell from the arrested look on Hermione's face that she was thinking what he was thinking. What? Said Ron, looking from one to the other. Well, the Chamber of Secrets was opened 50 years ago, wasn't it? He said. That's what Malfoy said. Yeah, said Ron slowly. And this diary is 50 years old, said Hermione, tapping it excitedly. So? Oh, Ron, wake up, snapped Hermione. We know the person who opened the chamber last time was expelled 50 years ago. We know T.M. Riddle got an award for special services to the school 50 years ago. Well, what if Riddle got his special award for catching the heir of Slytherin? This diary would probably tell us everything, where the chamber is and how to open it and what sort of creature lives in it. The person who's behind the attacks this time wouldn't want that lying around, would they? That's a brilliant theory, Hermione, said Ron, with just one little flaw. There's nothing written in his diary. But Hermione was pulling her wand out of her bag. It might be invisible ink, she whispered. She tapped the diary 3 times and said, Apparicium. Nothing happened. Undaunted, Hermione shoved her hand back in her bag and pulled out what appeared to be a bright red eraser. It's a revealer. I got it in Diagon Alley, she said. She rubbed hard on January the 1st. Nothing happened. I'm telling you, there's nothing to find in there, said Ron. Riddle just got a diary for Christmas and couldn't be bothered filling it in. Harry couldn't explain, even to himself, why he didn't just throw Riddle's diary away. The fact was that even though he knew the diary was blank, he kept absent-mindedly picking it up and turning the pages, as though it was a story he wanted to finish. And while Harry was sure he had never heard the name T.M. Riddle before, it seemed to mean something to him. Almost as though Riddle was a friend he'd had when he was very small and half forgotten. But this was absurd. He'd never had friends before Hogwarts. Dudley had made sure of that. Nevertheless, Harry was determined to find out more about Riddle. So, next day at break, he headed for the trophy room to examine Riddle's special award, accompanied by Hermione and a thoroughly unconvinced Ron, who told them he'd seen enough of the trophy room to last him a lifetime. Riddle's burnished gold shield was tucked away in a corner cabinet. It didn't carry details of why it had been given to him. Good thing, too, or it'd be even bigger, and I'd be polishing it, said Ron. However, they did find Riddle's name on an old medal for magic merit, and on a list of old head boys. He sounds like Percy, said Ron, wrinkling his nose in disgust. Perfect head boy, probably top of every class. You say that like it's a bad thing, said Hermione in a slightly hurt voice. The sun had now begun to shine weakly on Hogwarts, again inside the castle. The mood had grown more hopeful. There had been no more attacks since those on Justin and nearly Headless Nick, and Madame Pomfrey was pleased to report that the mandrakes were becoming moody and secretive, meaning that they were fast leaving childhood. The moment their acne clears up, they'll be ready for repotting again. Harry heard her telling Filch kindly one afternoon. And after that, it won't be long until we're cutting them up and stewing them. You'll have Mrs. Norris back in no time. Perhaps the heir of Slytherin had lost his or her nerve, thought Harry. It must be getting riskier and riskier to open the Chamber of Secrets, with the school so alert and suspicious. Perhaps the monster, whatever it was even now setting itself down to hibernate for another 50 years. Ernie Macmillan of Hufflepuff didn't take this cheerful view. He was still convinced that Harry was the guilty one, and that he had given himself away at the dueling club. Peeves wasn't helping matters. He kept popping up in the crowded corridors singing, "Oh Potter, you rotter," now with a dance routine to match. Gilderoy Lockhart seemed to think he himself had made the attack stop. Harry overheard him telling Professor McGonagall so while the Gryffindors were lining up for transfiguration. "I don't think there'll be any more trouble, Minerva," he said, tapping his nose knowingly and winking. "I think the chamber has been locked for good this time. The culprit must have known it was only a matter of time before I caught them. Rather sensible to stop now before I came down hard on them. You know what the school needs now is a morale booster. Wash away the memories of last term. I won't say any more just now, but I think I know just the thing." He tapped his nose again and strode off. Lockhart's idea of a morale booster became clear at breakfast time on February the 14th. Harry hadn't had much sleep because of a late running Quidditch practice the night before, and he hurried down to the Great Hall slightly late. He thought for a moment that he'd walked through the wrong doors. The walls were covered in large, lurid, pink flowers. Worse still, heart-shaped confetti was falling from the pale blue ceiling. Harry went over to the Gryffindor table where Ron was sitting looking sickened, and Hermione seemed to have come over rather giggly. "What's going on?" Harry asked them, sitting down and wiping confetti off his bacon. Ron pointed to the teacher's table, apparently too disgusted to speak. Lockhart, wearing lurid pink robes to match the decorations, was waving for silence. The teachers on either side of him were looking stony-faced. From where he sat, Harry could see a muscle going in Professor McGonagall's cheek. Snape looked as though someone had just fed him a large beaker of Skelly Grow. Happy Valentine's Day, Lockhart shouted, and may I thank the 46 people who have so far sent me cards. Yes, I have taken the liberty of arranging this little surprise for you all, and it doesn't end here. Lockhart clapped his hands, and through the doors to the entrance hall marched a dozen surly-looking dwarves. Not just any dwarves, however. Lockhart had them all wearing golden wings and carrying harps. Lockhart clapped his hands, and through the door to the entrance hall marched a dozen... Oh, I've just read that bit. Apologies. "My friendly card-carrying cupids," beamed Lockhart. "They will be roving around the school today, delivering your valentines, and the fun doesn't stop here. I'm sure my colleagues will want to enter into the spirit of the occasion. Why not ask Professor Snape to show you how to whip up a love potion? And while you're at it, Professor Flitwick knows more about entrancing enchantments than any wizard I've ever met. The sly old dog. Professor Flitwick buried his face in his hands. Snape was looking as though the first person to ask him for a love potion would be force-fed poison. Please, Hermione, tell me you weren't one of the 46, said Ron, as they left the Great Hall for their first lesson. Hermione suddenly became very interested in searching her bag for her timetable and didn't answer. All day long, the dwarfs kept barging into their classes to deliver valentines, to the annoyance of the teachers, and late afternoons as the Gryffindors were walking upstairs for charms. One of them caught up with Harry. "Oi, you, Harry Potter!" shouted a particularly grim-looking dwarf, elbowing people out of the way to get to Harry. Hot all over at the thought of being given a valentine in front of a queue of first years, which happened to include Ginny Weasley, Harry tried to escape. The dwarf, however, cut his way through the crowd by kicking people's shins and reached him before he'd gone 2 paces. "I've got a musical message to deliver to Harry Potter in person," he said, twanging his harp in a threatening sort of way. "Not here," Harry hissed, trying to escape. "Stay still," grunted the dwarf, grabbing hold of Harry's bag and pulling him back. "Let me go," Harry snarled, tugging. With a loud ripping noise, his bag split in 2. His books, wand, parchment and quill spilled onto the floor and his ink bottle smashed over the lot. Harry scrambled around trying to pick it all up before the dwarf started singing, causing something of a hold-up in the corridor. "What's going on here?" came the cold, drawling voice of... Oops, wrong voice. "What's going on here?" came the cold, drawling voice of Draco Malfoy. Harry started stuffing everything feverishly into his ripped bag, desperate to get away before Malfoy could hear his musical valentine. "What's all this commotion?" said another familiar voice as Percy Weasley arrived. Losing his head, Harry tried to make a run for it, but the dwarf seized him around the knees and caught him crashing to the floor. "Right," he said, sitting on Harry's ankles. "Here is your singing valentine. His eyes are as green as a fresh pickled toad. His hair is as dark as a blackboard. I wish he was mine. He's really divine. The hero who conquered the Dark Lord." Harry would have given all the gold in Gringotts to evaporate on the spot. Trying valiantly to laugh along with everyone else, he got up, his feet numb from the weight of the dwarf, as Percy Weasley did his best to disperse the crowd, some of whom were crying with mirth. Off you go, the bell rang 5 minutes ago. Off to class now," he said, shooing some of the younger students away. "And you, Malfoy." Harry, glancing over, saw Malfoy stoop and snatch up something. Leering, he showed it to Crabbe and Goyle, and Harry realised he'd got Riddle's diary. "Give it back," said Harry quietly. "Wonder what Potter's written in this," said Malfoy, who obviously hadn't noticed the year on the cover and thought he had Harry's own diary. A hush fell over the onlookers. Ginny was staring from the diary to Harry, looking terrified. "Hand it over, Malfoy," said Percy sternly. "When I've had a look," said Malfoy, waving the diary tauntingly at Harry. Okay, boys and girls, we are going to stop there, and that is at the top of page 253. That's about halfway through the chapter.